Hi there, Heroes to Hive students. I wanted to bring you along today to see what it looks like getting into a hive that's gone through winter. So it's about probably close to 75 degrees today here in the UP. It's the first 70 plus degree day that we've had of the season. And that is the day that you're looking for. Once you get into those 60 plus temperatures and nighttime lows above freezing, that's when you really want to start getting into your hive. Before then, it's just a little too early. You run the risk of chilling brood as you're going through the hive. This hive has overwintered very well. You can see there's a lot of activity on the top, but not a lot of activity on the bottom. And that's pretty typical of an overwintered hive because that hive has moved up over the course of the season, feeding on honey reserves. So I'm going to take you along as I go through this hive box by box and show you what's going on. The first thing we got to do, obviously, though, is unwrap this tar paper that's been on this hive all winter long, basically. Now you can reuse this if you fold it real nicely. You can get a couple years out of it. Generally, these don't last very long. You can also see my insulation here from the winter, and my moisture board still on. And you can see right there, a whole cluster of bees right on the top of the box. I'm going to bring you inside now. Okay, so we're going to take off this moisture board. The first thing you can see is that big old cluster of bees right there under that moisture board. Now, that cluster of bees, obviously we want to hang on to them, but what you can also see down in here is that this top box is just absolutely full of bees. Every frame covered in bees. And so we're going to go through this basically box by box to determine where that cluster's at and if we have to reorganize this a little bit to make things right. Essentially what we're looking to do is we're going to take our brood box, which is likely up here, and move it down below and give space above so that the queen has places to lay and so that our workers have places to store honey. That is one of the big things that causes swarming, is that we have this competition for space that you've heard me talk about time and time again. That competition for space, when we're looking in the frames, what it looks like is essentially where you should have brood, you have things like honey and pollen being stored there. So let's go through this first box. This cluster of bees right here, I'm just going to tap this, knock all those down in there. You can see my spacer here. I was in here, I guess it was about 2 weeks ago, and I put in a pollen patty just because we were kind of getting that point in time where pollen was kind of available out in the landscape, but there just wasn't a lot of days where they were getting flying. You can see they've eaten through some of that pollen patty here. Now the reason I put it up here is because that's where the cluster was when I was looking to see where it was. All right, so we're going to get into these bees again. And I'm just going to kind of run through this real quick. You know, I'm doing exactly what I'm telling you folks to always do, which is minimize the amount of time you're in the hive. This is likely the most time you will spend in a hive during the season, is this first time you get into them. So I'm looking for things like what's going on. So we've already got a honey frame here that's filled out. That may be from last season. You notice that I started from the outside. Propolis is pretty wet right now. Okay, so this frame right here you can see is a full pollen frame. That means that likely the next frame is going to be a brood frame. Mainly because they're always going to locate pollen near the brood because they need to have immediate access to it for food. We'll go ahead and pop that back in here. Now what I'm verifying is a couple things. I know how many bees I have. This is an 8-frame box. I've got 8 frames of bees here. The other thing I'm looking for is if I'm queen right and if she's, we've got brood going on in here. And sure enough, I have a brood frame right here. And when I look down into those cells, I have all stages of brood. I have everything from eggs through all the instar stages to capped brood. So, because I see eggs on that frame, I know I'm queen right. I'm looking at this back frame just because I've got it out. Lots of larvae, real beautiful white larvae in there, nice and big. Lots of food in those cells. This colony is rocking and rolling. I'm gonna go one more frame in. Again, a brood frame here, but what I see happening here, and I'll try and get this to the camera so you can see that in the middle of this frame here, there is some backfilling happening where there's honey and pollen where brood should be. That's an indication that this space is becoming limited in this colony. And it's a good indication that I need to get in here and kind of make things right. Make sure that we've got plenty of space in there. I'm going to go ahead and put this back in here. At this point, I am not going to go any further. I have seen that I'm queen right. I see that my larva looks really good. I can tell just from that backfilling sign that I need space. You can already see that we've got honey stored to the outside of the frames. Now, I have been feeding these colonies as well. We're pretty remote up here, so I usually do mass feeding where we just put out a few gallon feeders or a couple gallon feeders and just let bees kind of go to it as they may. So we may be seeing stores from last year, or we may be seeing stuff from this year. All right, we're gonna go down below one more time. All right, so here we are in the next box. I can pretty much expect that this is going to be a brood box as well. Why? Because there's drone brood up here. Now, one thing I will do, because I see that this has all now been uncapped, I'm gonna just kind of look into those cells, pull those little pupae out. And what I'm looking for in these cells is any presence of varroa mite. I'm not gonna do any checks right now. It's still pretty early in the season for that here in the UP. You can on these warm days do a varroa mite check. I'm not going to do one probably for another couple weeks. But just looking in there, just peeking in there and seeing if we've got any varroa mite in those cells, something just to look at. All right, so we're starting at the outside again. Honey already filled in that frame. Notice I'm putting those on the edge as I'm setting them down. Next frame. Pollen completely stocked on that frame. That means that the next frame is likely honey. Now remember that classic organization I always talk about, where we've got honey on the outside, and then immediately inside, if you're in an 8-frame colony, immediately inside you're going to have a mixture. On this one, you've got honey on the back and pollen on the front. So that's that mixed frame I'm talking about. These next frames inside of those should be brood frames. And I can already see, just by looking down into this hive, the next one is in fact a brood frame. But just knowing the organization of the hive, you're going to be able to tell where things should be. Okay, again, I see backfilling in here. So this colony is getting very, very cramped on space. Boy, there is just pollen all over the place. Again, I'm not going to go any further. I'm just making sure that this is a brood box. I already know that I'm queen right. So I'm not worried about that right now. All I'm worried about is how many boxes down does this brood go. Okay, let's go to the next box here. Okay, so here we are at the next box. This is now the third box down from the top. And we can see that the overall activity in this box is a lot less. Those last two boxes that we went through, 16 frames of bees total. They were completely packed. This box, much, much less activity, and what's likely going on down here is not a lot. They're likely just bees casually moving through these boxes here. And we want to make sure, number one, where the brood ends, and number two, if the brood does end here, if there's no brood down here, then we're going to take those two boxes we just took off and we're going to put them at the very bottom of this hive and let them start back over, moving up. Honey frame. Now this, a lot of you that have overwintered hives, this looks like kind of what you would expect in a mid-season hive. Pollen frame here, so we may have a little bit of brood down here. Let's take a look. But these are pretty monster hives. This is a Saskatraz line of bees. They are pretty robust. They tend to build up really fast in the spring, a lot faster than any of your other lines of bees that I've worked with. Okay, so I'm looking at this back frame, and in fact, we do have eggs on here. So I'm going to take a real quick look and see if I see a queen on here, because this is a frame that does not have eggs on the back, but it does have eggs on the front. So she may be very close. I'm going to pop that back in there. So even there, no, there was not a lot of activity there. We still do have brood down in here. I'm going to take a look at this frame, again, looking down in the cells to see what I see. And what I see on this frame is this is a frame of solid eggs. Again, another frame of solid eggs right there on the back. So she's moved her way down here, likely to try and find extra space. And this frame, we start on another food frame. Pollen on the front. Oh, we got a little pollen on the back too. All right, so they're all the way down into this third box with brood right now. So what does that mean? If this ends up being the last box with brood in it, it means that this will be the bottom box, meaning that it's on the bottom board. You're not going to reorganize this the way the brood chamber is set up. You're not going to move frames around. She's, you know, doing her job right where she should be doing it. All we're going to do is put this box, or if this one has brood in it, but we're going to move the bottommost box with brood in it to the bottom and restack it just like it was. And then what we'll end up doing after we do that is giving it a little extra space. All right, let's go to the next box. All right, so here we are in the second to last box. Again, a lot less activity down here. Let's see what's going on. Honey on that frame, and who do we find down here but our queen on an outside frame nonetheless. So she is moving all throughout these boxes trying to find space to lay. That is her right there, if you can see her on the camera. That is kind of an oddball place to find her, but you know, you always got to have your eyes open for her. So that is our queen right there. So because that is our queen on that frame, I'm actually going to put this back in very, very gently. Where did she go? She always likes to go to the darker sides of things. So a lot of times when you're handling a frame with a queen on it, she will try to move to the dark side of the frame very quickly. She actually fell off already. So that's something to really keep in mind there. You know, I had that frame out for just a brief second, put it back in there, and she's already, oh no, there she is. I was gonna say, that's pretty odd. So that's her right there. I'm gonna take her actually and move her. So I know that up in these boxes that she's already good to go. So what I'm gonna do is what we call a wing catch, and I'm just gonna move her so that I can continue inspecting this box without running the risk of crushing her. So I'm catching both of her wings, and I'm simply putting her in another box. So I just basically relocated her so that I'm not gonna harm her as I'm doing this. That is something that you can do as a beekeeper, no problem. You just gotta be comfortable with catching your queens. If you're very rough with them, you can hurt them. But I've been doing this long enough to where, you know, I've caught thousands of queens over my time, and I'm very comfortable doing it. Okay, so I'm looking inside of here to see what's going on. We've got a little bit of pollen there, nothing else going on. Kind of an oddball place to find our queen, but she's way down in here. This box here, or this frame here, nothing. But it's empty. These are definitely brood combs. You can tell by how dark they are. Generally, the darker the frame, that just means that they've been in the brood chamber. And why do they get dark? Well, it's because of a thing called travel stain. The bees walking over the surface of the cells over and over again actually imparts a color to them, and that's how you get that dark color on some of those brood frames, just because of all the activity on there. So there's actually no brood in here at all. These are totally open frames. So she was in here looking around for something, right? So what I'm gonna do is, because this doesn't have any brood in it just yet, I'm gonna take this box and I'm gonna put it on top of the rest of this stack. So this will be my first box on top of the 3 brood boxes. I'm gonna reassemble this. Again, this is the first time I've been down in this box all season. I haven't been with these bees like this in over 6 months. All right, so we're down in the bottom box, and let's see what's going on down there. All right, so we're in our bottom box, and let's see what's going on. I'm gonna pop this outside frame open. So, you know, I tell you all folks, you know, always start from the outside, because that's generally not where the queen's at. And, you know, sure enough, that's where she was today. Very, very atypical. But, you know, you got to keep your eyes peeled. Got a little bit of honey in there, nothing much going on. Nothing going on. I'm just making sure that we don't have any kind of brood, mainly because she was down so low. I just want to make sure that maybe she didn't make her all the way down and work her way back up there. But it doesn't look like it. There's nothing really going on down here. So This will be the last frame I take out here. Yep, nothing going on at all. Okay, so we're gonna put this back together. And you can tell I've probably only been in this colony maybe 10 minutes so far, 15 minutes at the most, and we're all the way through it. I'm ready to reassemble this, but I've got to do one last thing, because this is an overwintered colony, and it's clean the bottom boards. We do feed sugar during the season, and what you can see generally is that oftentimes a lot of that sugar will fall through, you know, as newspaper tears, or, you know, if you're being a little sloppy when you're putting on the sugar as using the mountain camp method, it can fall through, it can create a mess. So I'm going to take this box off, and then I'm going to show you how to clean these bottom boards real quick. It's not a big deal that debris comes down below, but it is a big deal if you just leave it. It takes a lot of work to get this stuff off the bottom board. So let's show you here. You can see on the camera, I'm using a new camera today, so forgive me if I go back and forth with it. We got a new camera for all this effort that's going into doing online workshops. Okay, so you can see this bottom board right here. And what we've got is we've got a thick layer of dead bees, and then we've also got some sugar here in the middle that's left over from us adding sugar on over the winter that's fallen through. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to tip this. You can see there's some bees hanging out there. And I'm going to scrape this with my hive tool. Now you can see this layer of dead bees and mold is pretty significant. So you want to get rid of that. There's a lot of moisture in there. So part of having a healthy hive is making sure that, you know, I do this every single spring as part of this day right here. I'll go through here and I just scrape these bottom boards. You can see there's actually quite a lot of sugar on there that's fallen through on this colony. Most of the time there's not that much. You can see that thick layer of dead bees. And that's just what happens over the course of the season. Those winter bees do die. You know, you noticed it wasn't like a gigantic cluster of them. It was just, you know, a layer of them, which is normal. You would expect that. So we've redone our hive here. Got this all nice and cleaned off. And now we're going to restack it. So the first one we're going to do is that, not the first one, not the last one we took off rather, but we're going to do this fourth one, or I'm sorry, the third one. We found the queen in the fourth one, but there was nothing going on there. I put her in the third one right here. So this is going to be our first brood box. That was the bottommost brood box we found in our stack here. I'm going to add the next one. That's our second brood chamber there. I'm going to add the third one. Now that was our top box of this stack at one point, but it was our top brood chamber. Now the next thing I want to do is, this is a medium hive, and so we want to make sure that we've got, I'm going to move you up here a little bit. We want to make sure, really, that we've got this whole thing organized correctly. But the main thing, we saw that there's already backfilling, so there's already showing signs of getting ready to swarm. Now we're right in the beginning of this. We're going to be about 2 to 3 weeks out from swarm season here. Maybe a little longer. It depends on weather, but everything happens really fast in the UP. I can see my apple tree, which is my kind of signifier, has already got buds that have broken. So we're getting pretty close. But I can plan for this. I don't have to wait for them to put on swarm cells to get them ready to make sure they don't swarm. What I need to do is I need to add space. So we saw that this box here that we took off was pretty much empty. Now, what I expect, it had pollen in it, it had some honey, it had space for brood. What I expect is that the queen's going to come up here to this fourth box likely. Usually 3 to 4 boxes is the space she uses in a medium. And she may start laying in here. If she doesn't come up this far, this then becomes space to store honey. I am also going to take another box that we had here. That was our bottom box. It was completely empty, but had a whole bunch of bees in it, and I'm going to add that. So that's another empty space of storage. So what I did is I reversed this hive. It's not a textbook reversal because excuse me, I didn't move the orientation of these 3 boxes. I simply treated the brood chamber as one segment and the storage chamber where the crop goes as the second segment, and I swapped the 2. Very easy to do, but now the hive has much more space. In addition, you can see that every box of this hive has a lot of bees in there. I would estimate we had those 2 boxes that were completely full. Then we had a couple boxes here that had, I'd say, somewhere between 3 and 5 frames of bees on there. So we'd probably say we have about 21 frames of bees in this colony. I know from seeing the brood that's in there, now the brood was not wall to wall yet, but I know that this colony is going to continue to grow. And I'm getting ready for splits here next week, so I want to continue to give this a lot of space. So the last part of this is I'm just going to add another empty super with drawn comb on it to the top of this box. And in fact, you know, based on kind of the size of this, I may add 2 because it is an 8-frame box. But this box is then, this whole hive then is ready to rock and roll for the beginning part of the season. I'm going to let this continue to grow over the course of the next week, and then I'm going to be coming back next week on Thursday. I'm off on vacation next week because it's splits week. I got to go pick up my queens, and we've got 50 queens coming here to split these 20 hives. We ended up not losing the hive I thought we were going to lose, and I think it's going to do all right. So we ended up losing 2 hives over the season, not 3. So we've got 20 hives here that we're going to be splitting over the course of next week, and I'll do some videos for you on that too. But that's exactly what you can expect on a big overwintered hive as you're going through it at the first part of the season. Hope you enjoyed kind of tagging along with me on this. I'll bring you along on some of my other adventures here in the bee yard. Thanks, Heroes to Hive students. Have a good one.